I'm going to start recording in case anyone wants to watch this back later. So this is our first webinar for our SIG93 series of the 25-26 year. And we're kicking off with Nicolette talking about parenting and motherhood in academia, specifically in PEAT. This is a topic that we've talked about for a few years. It's really important, but we haven't really had someone who's done the legwork and the research that's been able to present it in that way based on, our goal in AERA being a focus on research as opposed to just awesome discussion. So once Nicolette completed her dissertation, I hunted her down immediately and said, we would love for you to share this with the larger masses. So I am going to hand it over to her to present, conduct a panel, and then open the floor for any questions. And Nicolette, I'll just be letting folks in on the side and monitoring the chat. So I'll let you know if any questions are thrown out during, but we will definitely have time for questions at the end. If anyone wants to submit them in the chat, we will get to them. So go ahead and take over.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, it's not in presenter mode, but it's in, we can see
yeah, I think I'll probably just do it this way because otherwise I don't know how to get it out of presenter mode.
Okay, that works. Okay.
So I'll just kind of click through like this if that works.
Sure.
Okay. So thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here and present my research. I'm really excited. You'll notice a few different logos on here. As Tori mentioned, I did my PhD at University of Illinois, so a lot of this work is reflected there. But I'm currently a faculty member at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, so I wanted to include them on here as well. So I want to talk today about two of my empirical articles related to my dissertation. The first one being a quantitative investigation of work-family conflict, comparing male and female PEAT faculty members, and the second one being a qualitative examination just exploring the socialization of faculty mothers. So together, these two make up an explanatory mixed methods design. So I'm going to start today by talking about the quantitative study. I'm not going to spend as much detail about in this one. I'm going to spend most of my time today talking about my qualitative inquiry. So my quantitative study titled Crossroads of Career and Caregiving, a quantitative look at physical education, teacher education, faculty. The overall purpose of this study is I mostly just wanted to understand how caregiving responsibilities intersect with gender to shape the careers of PEAT faculty members. So this study looked at career satisfaction, advancement, professional trajectories to answer the following three research questions. Research question 1, do male and female experience career satisfaction differently depending on their caregiving responsibilities? Research question 2, how do partners' employment experiences influence career advancement? And then 3, in what ways do caregiving responsibilities influence long-term career paths? So using the following validated surveys of looking at role stress, emotional exhaustion, resilience, work-family conflict, perceived organizational support, job satisfaction, and distribution of parenting responsibilities. I'm not going to report on all of them, and not everything that we looked at was statistically significant, but I am going to share a little bit more about, before I get into some of the results of that, I'm going to share some demographic data about the participants of this particular study. So there were a total of 97 participants. 47% of them were females and 53% were male, so a pretty good distribution there. 70% of the females reported having a full-time working partner. 57% of the males reported the same. So and then as far as caregiving distribution, no females reported that their partner handled more caregiving responsibilities. So essentially the participants were asked to rank between them and their partners. I do the most work. I do more, not work, caregiving responsibilities. I do most, I do more, we do equal. My partner does more, my partner does most. So no females reported their partner is handling more. And then 24% of males said that their partner handles more or just more. And most was included in there as well. So, and then you'll also notice that the majority of our participants did have tenure status, so that could influence some of their experience as well. And a little bit more with that is looking at the number of children. So we categorize children into 3 different categories. Based on what our data allowed us to do. And so 2 of them are reported here for you, one of them being before school age, which we was under 5. So infancy, that included someone who was currently pregnant or their partner was currently pregnant. And then we included school age children to be children ages 5 to 18 years old. And then what you see not reported is adult children included in here as well. And so you'll see that we have about almost even distribution of male and females with school age children. And so some of those quantitative results here, we looked at work-family conflict and family-work conflict independently of one another. So essentially work-family conflict means that my family gets in the way of my work, and then family-work conflict, my work gets in the way of my family. And so as you see with this means plot over here, this blue line represents females. And then this red line represents males. So across the board, regardless of institution type, females experience more work-family conflict than their male counterparts. And then you'll see that males at doctoral granting institutions actually experience the least amount of work-family conflict. So interestingly there, these findings essentially suggest that caregiving pressures and institutional demands interact in compounding ways, leading to the disproportionate strain among female P faculty at doctoral institutions. And then we also looked at how the age range of children influence the work-family conflict and some of those emotional exhaustion things. And so you'll see here again, females being blue, females with at least 1 child between the ages of 5 and 18 experience the highest level of work-family conflict. And again, males here with at least 1 child between the ages of 5 and 18 actually experience the least amount of work-family conflict. These gender disparities persisted across institution type and tenure status. So parenting school-age children remains a consistent and significant source of strain, especially for females. There's, I think, a lot more to report here because I only have a small amount of time and I do want to focus a little bit on the quantitative piece. But one thing that's important to note here is I think a lot of supports are for parents that have children in their infancy, and there are less supports available for parents with school-age children. And I think this kind of helps to show why we still need those supports when they are in school age. So essentially what the data showed is that female faculty consistently report higher levels of emotional exhaustion, role overload, work-family conflict than their male colleagues. And this is true even when caregiving responsibilities may look comparable. So it's really not just about who is doing more hours of caregiving. These disparities kind of show up across institution types and tenure status, which tells us this isn't isolated to certain contexts. It's more representative of some structural inequalities in how women are positioned in academia, not just their individual circumstances. And then I do want to talk a little bit about my chapter, my qualitative investigation called the Scaling the Maternal Wall, Experiences of P faculty members navigating work-family conflict. So before I get into it, I do want to broadly define the maternal wall. So in the literature, the maternal wall captures the way that motherhood introduces a distinct set of penalties and assumptions that go beyond gender alone. While women in academia already encounter inequalities in pay, workload, and advancement, becoming a mother often activates these stereotypes that they are less committed, less competent, or less available than their peers. This operates at the intersection of two cultural ideals, the ideal mother and then the ideal worker, essentially. So one who is fully available to their family and then one who's fully available to their work. When these roles are positioned as incompatible, mothers are judged as failing in one or both domains. So in higher education, this often results in career penalties, such as reduced opportunities for advancement, stigmatization. Collectively, the maternal wall represents both structural obstacles and cultural biases that shape how faculty members are perceived, supported, and often undermined in their academic careers. So I wanted to give a little bit of that context. So this the research questions for this particular study looked at how female PEEP faculty mothers navigate the tension between family responsibilities and career expectations, what strategies they use to manage those burdens, how does the perceived organizational support or lack thereof kind of influence that, and then their relationship with peers and mentors, how that influences as well. There were 19 PEEP faculty across different institutional contexts that participated in this. 68% of them were married to male partners, 21% were in same-sex marriages, and 10.5% were the sole caregivers. So the results of this were, I developed 4 themes from the results. First one being stretching without breaking, mother scholars and the weight of redefining success, the illusion of flexibility, bent to the brink, and resisting the snap. So these themes draw on a metaphor of elasticity to represent how participants were pulled, strained, and tested, yet often remain intact to compounding pressures. And then the quotations were using their pseudonyms. Data was collected in 2 ways, semi-structured interviews and photo voice. They were analyzed using some collaborative qualitative analysis. The interviews and the photo voice were analyzed independently of one another and then analyzed again together. The photos themselves were not analyzed, but the participants' explanation of the photos were what was analyzed using CQA. So the first theme, stretching without breaking, represents faculty mothers essentially living in 2 worlds. So mothers describe being in both worlds, being at home and in work, and they were often expected to meet the demands of both. These roles often collided in literal ways. For example, several participants described bringing their children to work when school were canceled or they didn't have caregiving support. And as April's photo voice image elicits, kind of being pulled in multiple directions and balancing those roles. And so in order to meet the demands of both roles, participants describe relying on the margins. So as Laura mentioned, I set alarms to get, or I'm sorry, Wendy, I set alarms to get up at 4 in the morning and grade from 4 to 7 until my kids get up. And Laura echoed this by saying I'm usually working for 1 to 3 hours after her child has gone to sleep. Important to know is even during major life events, faculty are still working. As Naomi said, I'm literally in the hospital bed, laboring with my child and on my computer sending emails because that's just what you have to do to get done. That was not an isolated experience, but something that many people felt. And so in order to rely on to be functioning in these margins, mothers carved out productivity wherever possible, whether that was taking work to their children's games or things of that nature. And so it really because of the traditional academic model, didn't really fit their lived realities, participants had to negotiate what success meant for them. So for some, success meant finishing projects at a slower rate, turning down leadership roles because they knew that they wouldn't be able to give it their all. And for some, success included recognizing that caregiving itself was part of their identity, and that identity evolved into what I'd call the mother scholar identity, an integrative way of being shaped through ongoing socialization in both family and academic life. This identity is shown in Rebecca's quote. It says, "I think it's almost one and the same. I don't think I can really separate myself from being a mom and an educator. They're intertwined." And that influenced how they perform their academic roles. As Dawn mentioned, I think that my identity as a mother, which is the extension of the kind of human that I am, is what makes me an amazing doctoral advisor, because I do it in a maternal way. I'm deeply personally invested in their success. It brings us to my next theme, the illusion of flexibility when support comes at a cost. So institutional flexibility was often rhetorical and lacking alignment between culture and policies. For example, Amanda said they didn't get paid parental leave. She was pumping in her office. And Grace mentioned the institution just wants more with less left. So even with boundaries, it was successful. This kind of alluded to this policy contradiction. Policies look supportive, but often were inequitable. For example, one participant whose spouse also worked at her same university explained that instead of receiving 12 weeks of parental leave, they were forced to share 12 weeks between her and her spouse. So that can make it challenging to navigate that, and not a great policy. So, and then participants noted that motherhood was often treated differently or perceived differently than fatherhood in academic spaces. For example, Penny was told, "You shouldn't have children until after you get tenure." And when a colleague got pregnant, someone said, "Well, you must not want to get tenure." None of the women in the department ever had children before tenure, and the men did. I don't, and so importantly, this illusion of flexibility, flexibility was still emphasized as one of the few advantages that academia offered. So Carol said, "I consider myself to be a little bit more of the primary caregiver because my job offers that flexibility." And in Me's photo voice here, you know, she mentioned that when I was working, my little one needed me. He likes playing with my laptop, and at 10 months old, I don't view his interest as a distraction from work. Instead, I choose to stop and play with him, knowing that he needs my attention at this age. So having that flexibility to take a break, spend time with her son, and then kind of get back to work, that was an advantage of academia. Importantly, though, this came at a cost at home as well. And so this flexibility at times forced females into a role of default parent. As Eliza mentioned, my partner worked at home, but I was the one dropping them off, picking them up, doing childcare, doing all of the domestic responsibilities. And others had mentioned, you know, it's 90% of me doing the caregiving. I'm definitely the default parent. So flexibility was oftentimes an illusion. Academic work was framed as flexible, but it wasn't always. And then bent to the brink. Mothers carried a constant unseen mental load, anticipating needs, coordinating schedules, and holding on to others' emotions. As Monique said, we're always talking about the hats that we're wearing, and we tend to keep our kids all the ways we need to tend to them, making sure that we're keeping our own students tended to and cared for as well. And that took an emotional toll, feeling like that they're missing out. As you can see in Grace's response, that took an emotional toll on her. And this burden didn't ease as children aged, which is reflective of what the quantitative study showed as well. In fact, at times it became even more exhausting as children got older. And then as responsibilities accumulated, that led to a lot of emotional exhaustion. As Brenda mentioned, I love this quote. At first, I was burning the candle at both ends. Now the whole candle is on fire. And then for many, this exhaustion coupled with a persistent set of guilt, as Susan said, she's screaming from the diving board, "Mom, you're not paying attention." I was like, "Okay, I'm watching." She's like, "No, you're not really paying attention." It was a very humbling moment for her. I can't afford the hour you're at swim lessons. I can't afford to not be grading. That's how it felt for her. So emotional labor was not an ancillary feature of their experiences, but a defining one. While external responsibilities were often visible and measurable, the internal labor remained largely unseen and unacknowledged by institutions. And so finally, resisting the snap, coping, connecting, and reclaiming. So faculty mothers carried in response to the ongoing strain, participants described small but intentional acts to carve out space for themselves. This included boundary setting, prioritizing wellness, and drawing strength from relationships, and mentorship as well. So as Monique said, talking about her mentor, she did it all and continues to, and I look up to her in so many ways, but I know she has made a lot of family sacrifices to be where she's at. Her family's still happy and healthy and all the things, but she made a lot of sacrifices. And this is reflected in Heather's photo voice, where she felt like she was Wonder Woman, trying to be it all, do it all, for everyone around. And that translated into how they mentor, how the female faculty chose to mentor. Many now mentor through care, normalizing motherhood and setting transparent expectations. As Brenda said, I very intentionally talked to my advisees about the benefits and challenges of parenting in academia. While support from others offered moments of connection and affirmation, participants also emphasized that personal work of sustaining themselves in a system which offered little room for pause. So Grace mentioned, "When I'm home, I'm home." Tammy was intentional about prioritizing exercise as a coping mechanism. And despite these efforts to set boundaries and stay attuned to their limits, physical and emotional toll of overwork eventually forced a reckoning. Dawn, my body was like, "We're slamming on the emergency brake. You're not listening. We're done." And then Rebecca said, "My coping is working until I shut down, and then I get right back on that train." So just to kind of wrap this up and put a bow on it, I think there's a lot here, but I think it's important to understand that caregiving must be understood not as a competing demand, but as a force that fundamentally shapes how faculty construct their professional identities, navigate expectations, and interpret success. This challenges some older socialization models that treat family life as external to academic development. Faculty mothers' experiences show that socialization academia is not neutral. It's shaped through the body and everyday caregiving practices. Institutional flexibility often functioned as a gendered mechanism of control. Mothers were expected to absorb disruptions quietly, reinforcing their role as default caregivers both at work and at home. These patterns extend the idea of the maternal wall. It isn't only structural discrimination, but it's also the everyday normalization of invisible labor. Future work should take an intersectional approach, examining how caregiving intersects with race, institutional type, and rank to produce different socialization trajectories. I think there's a lot more here to go. We have a lot more to talk about. And I'll leave you with a closing thought that is not my own words, but something that I can't say as well as they do, which is the barriers for women in higher education not only raise questions of basic fairness, but place serious limitations on the success of educational institutions themselves. And I want to give a quick shout out because this is my dissertation, but it absolutely could not have been done without the support that I had. So shout out to Dr. Kevin Andrew Richards, my advisor and mentor at University of Illinois. Shout out to Minsa Kim, a doctoral student at the University of Illinois who did data analysis and all of that with me. And then Dr. Tori Shiver for her mentorship throughout this entire process, both before all the way up to now after it's done. So I couldn't have done it without. There's so many more people to thank, but on this in particular, I definitely wanted to give a shout out to these three. So thank you so much for listening to me ramble.
Thank you so much, Nicolette. That was fantastic. I think we'll open the floor later for questions. If you're comfortable now, we'll transition to the panel. So we can, get out of the presentation. And then if you want to, I don't know, introduce your panel members and then go ahead and lead that process. Well done.
Yeah. So I have 4 panel members who agreed to participate in this. So the first one is Dr. Karen Gaudreau, and Dr. Kate Egan, Dr. Ann Hockett, and Dr. Lou. I think I mispronounced your name. Could you pronounce that correctly?
Zhao Lu Liu.
Yes, thank you so much. So the one mothers in the field who can give better experiences than mine, but and then do you want? Oh, we'll save questions at the end, so I'll pull up the questions. So I had the sorry, I have too many tabs up. I lost my tab. Okay, so the first prompt that I wanted to get is how has being both a mother and a faculty member shaped your sense of self in academia? And then anyone can answer, and then you don't feel like everyone has to answer every single prompt.
I can start. I think that for me, I'm Kate Egan. I'm at the University of Idaho. I think for me, it's become like a badge of honor or something that I'm really proud of, and that I've tried to more purposely integrate into how I interact in spaces and how I talk. I like to be at conferences and have a picture of my family on my presentation and thank them. I guess it's my attempt at normalizing it and talking through it. Where I went for my doctoral work, the females, it was like the hidden curriculum. Nobody had a family, none of the females had a family or children. So I didn't really know how to navigate that space. And I don't think that they were like purposely saying you can't, but I didn't see it. And so when I had the opportunity to become a mother myself, I thought, how can I do this differently? And how can I interact differently? And how can I say things like, sorry, I have to go pump, just to like normalize what that means.
Can go next. Hi everyone, this is Xiaolu Liu. It's honored to be here. I'm currently an assistant professor at Georgia State University, working towards my tenure. This is my 4th year, and I am a mother of 2. One is 6-year-old and one is 1-year-old. I had my first one during my PhD study, during my 3rd year of PhD study, and I think how these 2 roles shape myself. I think I am a master of time management, hopefully. Multitasking, dealing with deadlines, teaching, and research responsibilities, and also my son's school, sports drop-offs, and housework. So it's kind of like a training for myself as well. It's a good way to train myself to be a good management. So yeah, that's how the process so far drive me from here. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. I'm Ann Hockett at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. Thank you, Nicolette, for inviting me and letting me take part. It's great to see you shine and flourish in this setting. So I'm so proud. But I find myself that being a mother and in academia, it's intertwined. It's one and the same. And I literally just got out of class teaching undergrads, and I use my family in my teaching, right? I can tell those stories and different things that happen. So it's literally intertwined. And I find myself working with especially my undergraduates that, they are an extension of my family as well. If they need something, right, we're there, we're supporting each other. And a lot of them actually, know my children from after school programs and sports programs as well. So it is one big family. So it's definitely intertwined. There's not really a lot of separation there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Goodrow from the University of New Mexico. Thanks, Nicolette, for your work and for the invite. I could have said all the things that the other moms have said. I'm going to go sort of bigger and more macro and maybe a little bit more deep, maybe a bit deeper in that I would say I was thinking about this question before logging on today, and I would say the motherhood and just parenting in general, the greatest challenge for me has been, well, it's all challenging, is the personal identity piece. And for me, I have two boys, ages 12 and 10, and I was 37 when my son Jack was born, my oldest. And I had my identity was wrapped up in this profession before I even met my husband. And, as a doctoral student, as an early career, I mean, I didn't meet my husband until I was in my first faculty position. So my identity was very much wrapped up in achieving and chasing all of these goals within Pete and within higher education and within the academy. And then Jack came along, and for the last literally 12 years, and anybody that knows me well knows that that has been an internal struggle around my personal narrative about who I am and what's important to me. And that has changed a lot. Because in my estimation, it had to. And sometimes I've had FOMO, sometimes, like you just sort of, I've gotten to the point where, and my friend Emily Jones gave me a book a long time ago, and the title is Good Enough is the New Perfect. And that's like, now my identity is being amazing as a whole person, as a mom and as an academic and a scholar, means that I'm not killing it. If I'm killing it at home, then I'm saying no to things at work, or I'm missing deadlines, or I'm not publishing that extra paper or getting any awards. Or if I'm going to kill it at work, then that means that I missed somebody's soccer game. Or Nate has to do all the grocery shopping and all of the laundry. So I'm like either constantly feeling bad. I'm constantly feeling like I'm dropping the ball somewhere, I think. And I've really had to make peace with that.
Thank you. And I think that's a shared experience. One of the participants said really gracefully, you're juggling all these balls in the air, and eventually one's gonna fall, and some you have to pick up, and some are just gonna fall. And that's there's no way that we can kind of do all of the things. So my next question for you all is, in what ways did you feel you had to redefine what success looked like for you?
I guess I'll piggyback off of what Karen said. Perfect looks a lot different these days, right? Being your best and being at your top. What does that look like? Some days my best is, right, I'm the best academic, best teacher. I'm writing these articles. And then some days my best is when I'm at my kids' sporting events, right? Or my husband is also a coach. So we have that whole chasm of things going on as well. So again, success looks different now, definitely, than it did before. But I think success is just every day it looks a little bit different. Whatever I have to give, if I can give it, then I'm successful that day.
Yes, I agree. And just like Karen, I have two boys. They're very energetic as well. And so like for myself, I'm trying to be energetic as them or a little bit more than that. So for me right now, like, getting promoted or tenure is not only like standard to be successful, but also be able to balance, progress at work and also presence at home. And also like I want to, make sure my boys are happy and they're, grow up with also their success. So their success sometimes counts towards my success as well. So yeah, just trying to be energetic and also be able to balance everything happen to my life.
I think that every semester, every year, I'm in a different place as a human. My profession is at a different place. My program is at a different place. New faculty, people going on sabbatical, changes at the institution. And then the kids are different. And my husband is in a different place. And so every 6 months, success changes. And I found that, when the boys were little, it was just trying to like keep them alive, right? And like do all the things. It was more like surface level, busy, like you don't have any time for yourself at all, right? And someone's always touching you. You're like, your body doesn't belong to you. Like, stop touching me. Now Jack is in 7th grade and I have time for myself. And well, aside from, gun violence, which I don't want to get to that, he'll stay alive probably. But the problems and the issues about being a successful parent are far more complicated now, far more social and emotional in nature, and just trying to help him be a good person. Fighting about, we're anti-cell phone. Jack doesn't have a cell phone, and he's the only person in the entire world apparently that doesn't have a cell phone. And that's like those sorts of things, like big picture things that, for example, like success right now is like trying to break through, I think, for him in that sort of social and emotional space, right? Whereas when he was a baby, it was different things, like diapers and bottles and pumping and those sorts of things. And so like when he was little, if you get all the things done and you made it to teach your class and you returned that review on time, you were crushing it, right? Now it's like, it's almost like the work stuff has become easier because I've been doing it a long time. So you can just cross these things off the list. And it takes me a lot less time, for example, to like review a manuscript than it did, 10 years ago when Jack was a baby. But now it's like, oh my God, like my only job is to raise him. Just don't be an asshole, right? Like, and that's a way harder project than just like changing the diaper. Does that make sense? So it's just bigger and heavier, I think, that piece of it.
Yeah, that actually jumps off to a really good point that I want to ask you all is there are a lot of supports for, well, not always, but some faculty have more supports when their children are in infancy stages, so that parental leave in that kind of first year of life maybe some policies like stopping your tenure clock. But both the data from the quantitative and qualitative studies shown that it doesn't get easier when children are school age. And oftentimes we think, and even me prior to doing this research, I kind of had this idea that, well, once they're in school, it's got to get so much easier because like you're not physically needing to watch them. They're in school for 8 hours a day, but Karen, you kind of alluded to some of those more complex things that are going on. I wonder if you all could share your experiences with how parenting looks different across your child's age levels, and does it get easier or does it just look different? What have been your experiences?
This is a very interesting question for myself, I think, because I have two and they have like 5 years old gap, and one is still changing diaper and bottles, and the other one is school age and now starting all the sport program. He is playing baseball right now, and then every week throughout the week he has like practices, training, and also games, like also like during weekend. So I feel like for my little one who is still just changing diapers, and I think for me it seems like much more easier at this stage. As long as he is full, he is able to sleep, and then someone can help him change diaper, he is fine. And for my older one right now, I have to drop him off and pick him up from different types of sport and activities, and that's definitely caused a lot of time as well. Like every time the training is 1 hour, and I have to stay there just for 1 hour. But within an hour I can do a lot of things, but I feel like I have to stay there. I think that's another way for myself. Like I have to give up something, but also protect the time with my little ones. So a lot of debating and emotional labor. I think I would say like sometimes I am struggling with that. I have a deadline due, like manuscript due tomorrow, and I still have to present in the game. So like from kids from like little, like younger age, I think it's more like physically tiring, and then now it's more mentally tiring sometimes. Yeah. I see a lot of nodding.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, Nicolette, when I heard that, and speaking to both points that I've heard, is I think in parenting, like there's like, and even in our jobs, like getting your first job or getting promoted in tenure, there's this notion that it gets easier. And I think it's like all stages of parenting are really difficult in really unique ways. And when they're really young, like 1 month is, a fourth of their life or a third of their life. So you're seeing this, you don't even know your kid, you're trying to figure out what they need, and you figure out something and it's changing. And that is different when they're older, they're a little bit more stable. But I've heard this notion of like little kids, lots of little problems, big kids, big problems. And I think that's like a true sentiment of like the emotional tax and thinking through that as well. So my advice to parents, or when I'm talking with people, is like certain things might get easier, like getting in the car to go to school, but like other things become a lot harder, and it's just like a pull and tug. And I think parenting, much like our profession, also gets into a comparison game that can get really unhealthy. Like that mom can do that and I'm not doing that, or that person can pick up their kid every day and I can't. And it's just and the internet's awful at it, and making you think things, or diagnosing your kids with things. So it's just all, I don't know. I wouldn't want anyone to think it gets easier. I think it just changes, and you have to be on that spectrum and think of it that way.
Yeah, I would agree. And Kate, you brought up a good point. I always think of my son and daughter, if they don't like the school lunch, right? So they're like, well, mom, can you make me cold lunch? No, you can make your own lunch. If you don't like what the school lunch is, then you get to make right? You get to make your own lunch. And it's like, but Sally's mom, brings these elaborate homemade lunches. I'm like, well, that's great for Sally, but that doesn't work for us. And right. And so then this is a life lesson too. If you don't like something, how can you make it? And getting those skills as well. So I agree with Karen as well, as we're trying to make good humans. right? There's always these logistics of getting kids places and all the things, but it's like my greatest joy comes from when I have someone who compliments my kids. Like what a great teammate that, you know, your son or daughter is, or at school, you know, they stayed and helped and cleaned up or did something that they didn't have to do, right? Those are my true joys and wins. And just like you all said, it doesn't get easier, it just gets different.
Yeah, a really succinct way, and I've shared this example before with the people at UNM, is like when they're little, you have to be physically close to them because they might kill themselves, right? Like you have to be like, you know, when they're first learning to walk, your physical proximity to them has to be very, very, very close. But now I feel like I have to stay emotionally close to them. And that shows up interacting with work in a really different way. Like I had to transfer Jack from his middle school that he was at last year to a different one. And I just had to do this last week, which meant that all of a sudden, like now I'm spending time looking at other middle schools, filling out stuff online, taking him, you know, like my Friday got hijacked because he was supposed to start at the new school and I got there and they didn't have him in the system and we had to go. So like just all of that sort of stuff, you just have to stay emotionally close. So it's like, you know, how others have said, like it's physically demanding when they're itty bitty and then more emotional labor as they get older.
Nicolette, we do have some questions. I know we could probably keep asking panel questions, and there actually are some for the panel, so it might be good to shift gears at this point, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm just gonna read out some of them from the chat, and then this is for the panel. And then Nicolette, if you have anything to add based on your research, please jump in. Mara Simon said, I'd be curious to hear from the panel their recommendations on things department chairs, deans, and higher up administration can do to remove the motherhood tax. And then a follow-up would also be interested in specific gender role imbalances that factor into the motherhood tax. Does the panel have any thoughts related to that in terms of leadership positions?
I have a couple or ideas with this, and hang with me because I might get a little controversial for a second, but I heard Mary Rudisell actually talk about this a little bit or touch on it at AKA last year, and she said with the notion of work-life balance as a department chair, she's asked a lot, and she says she doesn't know how to answer that because she doesn't know how we all work, and she doesn't know how efficient you are. So if you need to leave and pick up your kids, great, just get your job done. And I thought it was really like a really nice statement to think about, is that we don't know how everyone works and we don't know what's going to work best for them. So from a department chair, if I were to hear words of like, just get it done, that's how you need to get it done, is up to you, that power that you can give an employee. And I think policies are great, right? Like policies to delay tenure are great, but at the same time, I think we should be really careful with them, because I think we're asking someone to pause their career to do something that's a natural life event and a natural part of life. And so if they can meet the requirements without the pause, then why even bring up the pause or help them meet the requirement without the pause? Because it's a financial delay you're asking for them to, and another insecurity. And so I think policies can be really great to protect people, but I think they can end up pushing people into a category they don't want to be in or don't need to be in. And so that's kind of my 2 cents with that part. And the other thing, a friend that I love that a department did here on campus, is that they had agreed as a department that they would have no meetings outside of school hours, so that parents weren't forced to, like, department meetings or committee meetings outside of this school, like K-12 school hours, so that parents that had to leave early weren't kind of forced into this limbo of what to do. And then they could elect to have like their one-on-one meetings afterwards. And I thought that was really cool to try to keep everything between 8 and 3 or 8:30 and 3, whatever your school district is.
I was thinking about the recommendations, like I was reflecting on my own like parental leave time when I was giving my second one last year. so one thing I wish I could have is like have more or longer paid parental leave. So I don't know if that's institution by institution or it's similar. Like for us, we have like 12 weeks, like under Family Act or something like that, but we only got 6 weeks paid like for parental leave. And if I go up, like exceed 6 weeks, it's gonna be like no paid, but I can still take another 6 weeks, but no paid. I said, no, I still have to pay for my bills, take care of the whole family as well. So I wish like if I can be paid for like 12 weeks, that would be very helpful for my, my body recovery and also my mental as well. And another thing is not sure like if it's something like I hope, we can is be more like flexible with teaching load, whenever you have a newborn or, consider the number of kids you have and also the service as well. But I think that's the same thing across different general faculty or, different roles. So whenever there's a new child arrive, I, hope like we can be considered to offer more flexible with teaching load or reduce the teaching load. So that's something that come to my mind when I was reflecting on my own, time when I was having a new, child at that time. So.
I think
Yeah, my comment is the same about workload. I think that there's a significant amount of unpaid labor that happens in higher education, regardless of discipline. And I think that many times faculty, whether you're a male, a female, a parent or not, express to administration or management that that my workload is too high. And then there's always an excuse as to why that can't either be remedied or compensated appropriately. And I think that if you were to start there, that a whole lot of this would solve itself. But that's an unpopular position to take. But I think there's just a lot that there's either overt or unspoken cultural codes around engaging in administrative work or service work. I mean, beyond like it's real easy, the nuts and bolts of a teaching overload, like that's pretty straightforward. It's administration really likes to call things service so that they don't have to pay for them. And sometimes it comes in the form of like program director or program coordinator and that's incredibly problematic on its face. And then add being a mother on top of that, especially if you're a mother that is doing any sort of that administrative work on your campus. It's just bananas. So the recommendation would be to modify the workload and then give resources to hire additional people to do the work or pay people for the work that they're doing. Then at least if you're, maybe you don't have any more time, at least you have a little bit more money. So then you can pay for things. Maybe you can pay for a cleaning lady or a cleaning person at your house. I mean, anyway, workload and resources.
Yeah, if I could get paid or reimbursed for my service, that would be great. I mean, I love service, like it fills my buckets, but again, having a husband who works at the same university, it's like, how much are you getting paid for that? How much are you going to get paid for that Zoom meeting that you're doing or whatever, or that, advisory that you're doing or what? It's like, I'm not, but I have to do it. So that'd be great.
I think I just want to follow up. I think one thing that's important to recognize and acknowledge is that when we're talking about institutional policies, I collected this data within the last year, and there were still participants that did not have any type of paid parental leave. Okay, so I think when we're talking about things that we can do, first of all, making sure that everyone has access. I think there's also rhetoric depending on different types of institutions that we're at. And not to pick on the research intensive universities, but at times those institutions tended to promote rhetoric where if you're a mother, if you're a parent, you're less engaged, you're less like willing to publish a bunch of research and at times being told that if you have a child before you receive tenure, then you're not committed to your career. So women are being forced into, do I want to be a mother? Do I want to be a faculty member? And then we also have to think about this biological clock, right? So what age do people typically reach tenure at? And then if they have to achieve tenure before that it's acceptable for them to have children, what does that do for like their family planning and their biological clock? And why are we expecting mothers to plan to get pregnant and make sure that baby comes during the summer months? Like those are things that females shouldn't have to be charged with. And it varies so much by state and institution. And there were participants who said that they left a certain institution because of the things that were being talked about and supported, and then went and found an institution that had a more family-friendly environment. Not everyone has that opportunity to leave and find a different institution. So what does that do for those females? So I don't think I really gave any answers, but I hope like just to provide more context that I think sometimes we think that in 2025 everyone has paid parental leave, and not everyone does even have that yet.
All right, thank you all for sharing. And we've had a lot of, good discussion in the chat as well. I know we're coming up on our time of 2:00. So I want to make sure that we're able to wrap up if people need to leave. And if anyone can or is willing to stick around and chat a little more, we could probably do that for about 15 minutes or so. Or you're welcome to take off. But Nicolette, thank you so much for leading this, and thank you to the panel members. This is really important work and great conversations to be had. And in my experience, the hidden curriculum, as Kate said, is something that's kind of just been in the background all this time. And it's nice that we're bringing it out loud and actually talking about it. So really great job. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to my wonderful panel for agreeing to participate and share your experiences. So thank you. You're amazing women. I look up to all of you. Thank you.
Hey, a real quick plug, Tori, if I can. Thanks everyone for being here for the AERA SIG93 webinar. Please keep an eye out for your emails for other webinar sessions just like this coming up each month. We'll do our best to get you all informed of those dates as early as possible. Thank you, Nicolette, so much for coming to present. You did great work, and it was awesome to hear of all the wonderful women on the call for motherhood. I am a new dad also. I'm expecting my second child in about 2 weeks, and my wife is an instructor at our institution, and so I could relate a little bit to everything you all are saying. So thank you all for sharing. But please continue to attend our webinar sessions. We'd love to see you all each month. So thank you again.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.
You too. If anyone else has a comment, you're welcome to get off chat. I do see some comments, or be able to, get off the mute and speak out. I see some comments in the chat, but it looks like the folks that made those comments have left.
I know, I'm kind of bummed we
Mara.
didn't get to Hal's comment because I
Yeah.
actually really wanted to talk about it and this idea of the 21st century women being able to ask or require for the supports, but that just isn't a reality. And I think that if you haven't lived it, people don't really get the literal barriers that are in place that would just put anyone who's delivered a human being or adopted an infant at a disadvantage, I think, because I really was bummed we didn't have time to like dissect that comment as a group, because I think it would have been a really interesting conversation. Next
Yeah, and
one.
I'll read it really quick. It just says, surely in the third decade of the 21st century, professional women have the ability and cultural power to insist on supports and demand gender or role equity in parenting, household duties, and the host of other activities once known many decades ago as women's work and a mother's job. And I agree, Mara. I think that's a really interesting topic to discuss. When we had 5 minutes left, I knew there was no way we could dive into it well enough in our time frame. But since there are a few folks still here, if anyone has some like pressing thoughts on that, if they don't have to go, feel free to share now, or yeah, we can circle back to it another time. Thanks, Mara, for bringing that up.
I think I understand where a comment like that comes from, because certainly it's not, 1950, right? So yes, to some of that. But there's still a significant amount of that that's pervasive, that whether it's spoken or not, unspoken expectations of what moms should and shouldn't do, what they should and shouldn't look like, and how they should or shouldn't be, that still exists. I
Well,
have
I
anybody
think
that,
more
sorry, go.
importantly, there's also like a lot of literal like structural barriers. So there's like unspoken discourse, but there's also things like rules that you have to be actively engaged at your institution for 10 years to go up for promotion. And so someone who took a semester maternity leave is now penalized and loses a year of
Mhm.
that like raise. Like that's the things I think beyond the social discourse that we need to really dig into, is like, what are the literal policies and structural barriers that prevent us, you, me, all of us, from like moving forward on par with the counterparts who like are not taking on this childcare role in a primary responsibility. I think like, we talk a lot about social discourse and that like internal stuff, but like the thing that I think is very important to acknowledge is the like the literal things that say, too bad, you're not going to do this as quickly as your male counterpart might do it.
One thing that I think is important too, that I didn't get a chance to talk about from my research, is that I think we have this idea that because we're in the 21st century, things should automatically be better. Like we've come such a far way. But take COVID, for example. COVID actually exacerbated the emotional exhaustion and overwork that females experience during the pandemic. The experiences of females, and so like we're talking about essentially a household where both parents are in the house, theoretically, and the kids are in the house and everyone's in the house because we're on lockdown. The research has shown that during that time, females, their work was, and like the expectations for them skyrocketed, and their male counterparts were doing less work than they were doing before, and not having the ability to use, oh, I have to go to my work as an excuse because everyone's in home. So everyone's in home, and yet mothers are now teaching their kids, doing their job, and fathers are just doing their job in a different room. So I think it's important to, like, we have this idea that things should automatically be better, but they're not, and I don't know that they're getting any better.
Tom, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something? Seems to be an audio issue. I don't know if it's just me. I
I
cannot
can hear you a little bit now.
Oh, there we go.
Here. How about now? Yeah, better? Well, first of all, great session. Thank you. And I would just reinforce what Mara said. Having been in a deanship at Michigan, which is typically a very progressive institution, I think policy advocacy, particularly by central administrators, provosts, deans, to assure that individuals, mothers, fathers, anyone who has responsibilities that interact with their jobs need to be protected, need to be assured that we have your back. And it's easier said than done, but I'm just amazed by institutions that don't have family leave or parental leave policies in this day and age. And of course, here's my political stance. It's just going to get tougher. And it's God only knows what's going to happen in the next year or so, or the next week, for that matter. But I appreciate everything that has been expressed today, having witnessed it over nearly 50 years, and having experienced as a father, as a spouse of individual who experienced many of the same things that you've experienced. I just wish everyone well, and hopefully you have the support and structure to make sure that you can succeed in your work and with your families. Because for me, the bottom line is family comes first. That's easier said than done, but those kids and your partners are precious.
Thanks, Tom. I think that's it for the questions. Mara, unless you had any, I know you had some comments throughout, so I'm not sure if there were additional questions or
just blowing up the chat. But the irony is that I have 12 minutes until daycare pickup, so I actually have to run.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, again, thanks everyone.
Thank you to everybody. This was great. It's Nicolette. This was awesome. And Karen, Gilu, and thank you and Tori. Thank you all. I mean, really, it was a really important conversation to have and continue to be having. So thank you. All right, I gotta run. Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.